Welcome to the Fire and Earth podcast with your hosts, Jason Mefford and Kathy Gruber. Fire and Earth, giving you the keys to unlock your limitless potential.
Welcome to another episode of the Fire and Earth podcast. I'm your co-host, Jason Mefford.
And I am Kathy Gruber. We are so happy to be back with you. Hey, Jason, I know we've talked before. I'm a huge fan of Eckhart Tolle. I love his stuff. I've read all his books. I studied with him in person. I did a 6-month program where I got to actually be with him in person a couple times. And, I did a little 5-part video program with him the other night on manifestation. And I know we've talked about that before. We had Victoria Gallagher on, and that this getting what you want and projecting, those desires into the future and getting them is something we've talked about before. And in his program, he had a quote that we are often confusing what is happening in our minds with reality. And that jumped out at me because, he has said on numerous occasions, it's not so much our circumstance that caused the stress and the unhappiness, it's our narrative in our head around that. So I thought we'd talk about that today, about how our thoughts are affecting things. And
I think that's great. I love that quote because, so much of the time, actually, one thing I was told, and this is kind of a little bit more esoteric too, but it kind of comes back into this of, if you try to think your way through life, you will be lost. And I think this is one of those things, if we think about our head, our heart, our gut, and we can get into that probably in another episode, but so much of the time we're taught that everything happens in our brain. It doesn't all happen in our brain. Okay. And what ends up happening, so much of the time is our brain actually tricks us. Right. I mean, this being, entertainment magician kind of background too, right? As far as, there's a reason why sleight of hand and magic are illusions, right? Yeah. We're able to trick the brain into seeing or not seeing certain things, right? That's the whole craft behind magic is, doing some of the things so people don't see
Yep.
what you're actually doing, right? That's the craft in the trick.
Yep.
And so, of course, why would we also not get tricked in our brain in other stuff that goes on too? Even if we're not sitting in front of a magician watching a show, your brain will still trick you.
Yep.
And not provide to you or give you what is actually happening in reality. And if you try to think your way through it to understand it, sometimes you just get lost. You start going around in your head.
I was just gonna say, we start to tell those stories, right? So this, I remember a friend of mine coming into my massage office and he goes, "My wallet was stolen." And I went, "Oh my God, your wallet was stolen?" He goes, "Well, I can't find it." And I went, "Whoa, okay, wait, those are two really different things. Like, was it
Well, of course,
stolen?
I couldn't have lost it.
Right. Was it stolen or can you not find it?" And that's what his brain did. It was hilarious. And then when I, pointed out the difference, he actually started laughing and he goes, "I lose stuff all the time." But he just had that, we've talked about this before, this reactivity. If it's a miss. Oh, it's right there. Our brain tricks us because of those thoughts give us our identity. It's our ego going, "Hey, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here." And the other great point he had in this little series is that we are human beings. We are this human part that thinks, that goes to work, that puts on our pants, that has relationships, and then we are this being aspect of it. And we have to have both. We can't sit around being all the time. This is what the monks do and the people, the hermits, and that's probably not our calling. I know it's not mine. So how do we find that balance of the being and the doing? And I talk to clients about this all the time because we're so into the doing. I'm Capricorn, doing. We have to do, we have to pay the rent, we have to pay the mortgage, we have to raise the kids, we have to do all the stuff. So how can we find that being in that doing? And that is such a hard balance.
Yeah, because they're two different things, right? That again, a lot of people don't think about. That's why we're called human beings, not human doers. Right. But for most of us, the being is actually the hardest work to learn how to do that, especially after we've been so used to doing all the time.
Yeah.
But let's kind of get back, because our mind is confusing,
Mm.
what's actually happening versus reality. And I heard you use the word circumstance, right? Is so much of the time we look around and there are certain circumstances that are happening that we're making stories about, right? We're
Mhm.
interpreting based on our beliefs, based on our identity, and that may not actually be what's going on, right?
Yep.
So how do we kind of separate, because I know a lot of times people, they get stuck in their circumstance, right? Which again is why Eckhart was talking about this in manifestation, right? Is so much of the time we end up getting stuck and we're like, oh, well, I don't have the money, so I can't. Well, that's playing by circumstance, right? As opposed to, well, is that the reality?
Yeah.
And I know people will say, well, look, here's my bank statement. I only have $42 in my bank account. That's a fact.
Mhm.
Oh, is it? From a manifestation perspective, no, not necessarily, right?
Right.
But how do we kind of move from just getting stuck in our circumstances to being more open to possibilities, or seeing a reality that could be different than the story we're telling ourselves?
Yeah. I think so much of it is staying present. And he talks about that also. Let's use the example. You're sitting in traffic, right? You're on the 405, you have to get somewhere. The reality is you're sitting in traffic. But what is your brain doing? Fuck, I should have left 15 minutes earlier. And I knew this was going to happen. And had my daughter not needed to feed the cat because I told her to do it, and I'm going to be late for my meeting. And that's the story we're telling. It's the story that's creating all that stress. The reality is I'm sitting in traffic.
Mhm.
That's it, period. And it's the stories that our brain goes, ooh, you better get upset about the, which Eckhart Tolle calls the pain body, which is that uncomfortable feeling that gets triggered when this kind of thing happens. If we stop that narrative, if we stop that dialogue in our head and we just stay present, all we know is we're sitting in our car. It's that dwelling on the past and projecting into the future that causes the stress, causes the problems.
Well, and at that point, that's the option again, where we have to be able to change our story, right? Instead of getting all angry about, oh, my daughter needed this, and so I had to, I ended up leaving late. What if you just stop and go, hey, well, I'm sitting in traffic. I got a great, audiobook on, or I get more time to listen to the radio, or whatever it is that you happen to be doing, and focus on that present moment, as opposed to bringing all those emotions from the past into where you're at in the present.
Yeah. And maybe that does inform the future. We're having tons of construction here in Santa Barbara, and I have a client that has to go from Carpinteria up to Santa Barbara. He normally leaves, he gives himself 20 minutes, it's fine. He's recognized that because of all the construction, he was so late for his first appointment, we barely had time to do anything. So now he does recognize, okay, I need to leave 40 minutes, not 20. So that experience does inform the future. You don't want to keep repeating that over and over again. You don't want to be on the 405 every day going, I'm late again. We have to grow and evolve and adjust. And that comes through having that pain, if we will, of crap, there's construction, I have to leave earlier. But we can't get stuck in that narrative in our brains. That's what's going to get us in trouble. That's that rumination on things that is pulling us away from this present moment. And how often have we lost something right now because we're so worried about something in the future, or so still dwelling on something from the past, that we're missing what's actually happening right now? Someday they might leave me. Okay, but they're sitting in front of you right now. And you're ruining this moment by projecting that someday it might be different, and that's sad. And I've done that too, where, I've glommed onto the cat because I know we have to put it to sleep in 2 days. But it's with me right there. Like, don't project to the lost part of it. Stay present with that animal while you have it, or the whatever it is and sitting in front of you.
Well, it happens all the time. I mean, one of the terms that I like to use is that I think describes it well, is most of us go through life in a hypnotic state. Now, hypnotic states are good in doing certain work. I mean, you're a hypnotist. You understand that. I understand it. I do it on myself all the time, right? So there's a good thing of being in a hypnotic state, but what tends to happen is people are in a hypnotic state going through life, either hypnotizing themselves about the past or about the future. Yeah. And what ends up happening is people wake up at the end of their life or midlife. That's why midlife crises happen. and go, what the fuck, right? I missed all of these things that were going on, right? And so, like you said, as opposed to, worrying about having to put the cat down, just enjoy the cat for the 2 days, right? Because those are going to be memories again that you can go back to. If you're worried about putting it down, you're not present with the cat for the 2 days. Do you think you might have some regrets afterwards? Like, I should have just held the cat more.
Yeah. I had a client named Dorothy. I started working with her when she was 90. She was a hoot. I talk about her in one of my books. She did a striptease at her own 85th birthday, and she wore tons of makeup, and she was just this vibrant, like, red hats. And I mean, she was hilarious. All she wanted to talk about was sex. She'd tell me about her lover. She was just a hoot. And this was when I still did like house calls, and I was doing a lot of more like geriatric massage. So I showed up at her house one day and she said, "I want a red couch." And I went, "Okay. So I am having this custom red couch made." And I went, "Okay." But there was a part of me that went, "You're 92. Why in the world are you spending like $8,000 on a red couch when you're probably going to die soon?" This was complete. Yeah, but I mean, seriously, this was complete ignorance of my part. This was years ago. And then I thought about it more, and I'm like, you know what? If she has the fucking couch for 10 minutes, good for her. Or somebody who knows their terminal, who goes, buys themselves a diamond ring because they've always wanted it. If they have that diamond ring for 15 minutes and that makes them happy, and that's what they want in the world to fulfill that aspect of their lives, who cares how long it's going to last? We have no idea how long it's going to last. So enjoying this present moment, whatever that means to you, whatever you want to put in that present moment with you, I think that's the key to it, and not projecting into this, well, I'm only going to have it for 2 days. Well, then take it for 2 days. Enjoy it for 2 days.
Well, and it's one of those, we never know. We never know, right? And so again, I mean, sometimes one of the things that our mind does to trick us is in thinking that we have a bunch of time. We don't necessarily have a bunch of time, right? We do so far. I woke up, I got out of bed today. I know I got today, at least this part of today I have, right?
Yep.
Will I wake up tomorrow? I don't know. I hope so. I'm planning on it. That's my intention.
Yep.
But we don't know, right? And that kind of goes back to that hypnotic state, that sometimes we always think that there's more time. Yep. But tomorrow never comes, right? It's a great line from a song. Tomorrow never comes. Creedence, Clearwater Revival. It's always today.
Yep.
It's never tomorrow.
Yep.
And at different times, I mean, I saw this with my mother, of always, working hard, having the career. I'm going to travel when I retire. And then she retires and has cancer, and 5 years later is dead. Right. So we don't know. One of my high school friends, same thing, is, he'd lost his father just a few months ago, literally. And all of a sudden, this week he finds out that his mother's cancer has come back. It's malignant throughout her whole body. Oh. She probably only has a few days to live.
Wow.
Right. So again, it's like, we think we have time, but do we really have time?
Right.
So why not live life to the fullest? Do the things that you want to do that make you happy, whether that's a red couch, whether that's getting a diamond ring, whether it's sitting around and petting the cat, whatever it is, because we don't know how much time we have. So live life to the fullest.
Yep.
That the Tim McGraw song, Live Like You Were Dying, came into my mind a couple of weeks ago, again, as I was thinking, I did some posts on it. But, if we lived our life more like that, because that's one of the ways that your brain tricks you.
Oh, yeah.
And that's why people end up having regrets so much of time in life.
Yeah. Or you save that thing. We just watched Don't Look Up the other night, which was an incredibly good movie.
Show. Oh,
but what made me so sad, let's see if I can do this crying, because I tried to talk about this last night and burst into tears. Nope, here it comes. I've cried on the show before. What made me so sad was the last scene where they broke out the good wine and they're finally talking and they had the good china. Why are you fucking waiting? Like, why
Well,
are we not
and
living like that all the time? Break out
and
the
be,
lingerie and the china and the good
yep.
wine and the,
And because that was to me the climax of the movie, right? Obviously, in a lot of ways. And the line was, we always had everything.
Yep.
We always had everything.
Yep.
But they weren't taking the time to do that and to have that meal and spend that time together. Everybody was off doing their own thing and never thinking about it. And it's a great reminder to all of us, right?
Yeah.
Is if you want to have a more fulfilled life, live like you were dying.
Yep.
And that this could be your last day. When I was still, pretty early in my career, but one of the executives who was mentored me a little bit, he was getting ready to retire. So we were at an executive retreat. It was just me and him in the bar, and we were talking, and I said, Tom, you're going to be, retiring soon. What is it that you want to do? Kind of like, what's your bucket list kind of thing. And I remember he turned to me and he said, Jason, I have lived an amazing life, a life of no regrets. And I don't need to do anything else. Now, his plan was, again, retire, leave LA, go back to Kansas where he was at, just hang out at the golf course, country club, play golf every day, enjoy his friends. But he didn't wait until that point in his life. So much of the time, the shoulda, woulda, couldas, don't live a life of shoulda, woulda, coulda.
Yep.
Right. Live a life of no regret.
Yep.
And that's what he did. And that really kind of, stuck with me, especially with the experience of my mother, and some of the things like that of, I don't do it well all the time, but I keep reminding myself to live life today, because we don't know if we have tomorrow.
Yeah. And so much our brain gets in the way of that. It pulls us out of this present and tricks us into thinking we have all the time, or we don't have any time, or, it's just, it's going back to the quote, we confuse what's happening in our mind with what is reality. And one thing that, when you said, there's only today, there is no tomorrow, something that Eckhart Tolle's story he tells all the time is when he was living in the UK, there was one pub he really liked, and there was a sign on the door of the pub that said free beer tomorrow. And he said inevitably every day that he was sitting in there, somebody would show up and go, I'm here for my free beer. And the owner would go, well, no, come back tomorrow. And the guy's like, no, I was here yesterday. And the bartender goes, yeah, tomorrow.
Yeah, tomorrow is the free beer.
It's today now. And it's just, that's so great. And the people actually went, I'm going to go back for the beer. No, not realizing, well, it's not tomorrow. It's today now. There is no ever tomorrow. So I love, and he always chuckles and I love his little laugh. So
well, and it's like I said, it's just a good reminder, because like you said, your brain does trick you. Now it's trying to trick you. So just do some of these things to see what the reality is right around you. And one of those great things is just to be present, live in the present moment, enjoy, and do everything that you can now, because like you said, your brain's trying to trick you that either you have a ton of time or you don't have any time.
Yeah.
Reality is you just have what is, right?
Well, and you can ask the question, is this real, or is this my brain telling me that? And like you said, it's the optical illusion, it's the magician. Is it the woman's, she's not really being sawed in half.
What? Is that why there's not a whole bunch of blood coming out at the bottom?
That's why there's still people that have magician's assistants, because I think the job would have burned out long ago if you were actually really being. So, but it's an illusion, and that's what our brain wants to trick us into doing. So, yeah, I love this conversation. Cool. Yeah, take the pause, ask the question, all that good stuff. Yeah, cool. Yay. I'm Kathy Groover. I can be reached at kathygroover.com.
And I'm Jason Mefford. I can be reached at jasonmefford.com. So go out, have a great week, live like you were dying. However, whatever from this episode that inspires you to live a better life. And catch you on the next episode of the Fire and Earth podcast. See ya.
See ya.